Thank you so much for joining us today on the Moms Who Know podcast, the podcast for moms who know that when they take care of themselves, they can take better care of everyone else. I hope you are starting the new year off with amazing things, and we are starting off with a great call today with Alisa Kennedy Jones. We're going to talk a little bit about epilepsy, about when things change in your motherhood journey that you were not expecting. It's a great call, and she has a lot of great things to share. Now, if your dinner time routine is going super smooth and easy every day, then maybe this isn't for you. But if you're looking for a little bit of extra time in your day, then you might want to look into Your Dinner is Planned. Now, I had the creator of Your Dinner is Planned, Jasmine Schmalhouse, on the show a while back, and she has created this amazing meal planning service. Plans your meals and your grocery shopping all done for you. You can get all the details at Moms Who Know podcast /dinner. And it really just helps to take some of that planning and guesswork out of dinner. So if that's something that you are looking for, go to momswhoknowpodcast.com/dinner to check that out. And let's get to the call with Alisa. Hello and welcome to the Moms Who Know podcast. I'm your host, Chanel Nielsen, and my guest today is Alisa Kennedy Jones. Alisa, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Really delighted.
I am delighted too. I think that this is going to be a great call. I have not had the chance to read your book in its entirety, but what I have read, I'm super excited to learn more about your story and to get in deep about epilepsy, which is one thing we're going to talk about today. But before we get into that, let me introduce you. So Alisa is a writer for TV and theater. She's done all kinds of things, including advertising and branding. She writes the blog Gotham Girl, and she recently published a book. And tell us the title of your book.
The title of the book is Gotham Girl Interrupted. And yeah, it's out from Imagine Penguin Random House, available everywhere when books are sold. And I'm in the book tour.
Yes. Well, I've read just the beginning and I love it. It's just so well written that you feel like you are right there with you. And to me, that just makes it so fun when you're reading a book and you want to read more. So I'm excited to learn more. And then when we're done here, I will get back to my reading. So to start off, tell us a little bit more about you. We're going to talk today about epilepsy, but that isn't something that you have always struggled with. You haven't always had epilepsy. So tell us what your life was like pre-epilepsy, your career, your motherhood, and then we'll kind of dive into your now.
Wow, that's a lot. Okay. I've had a really interesting adventure as a mother. I was one of those kids who I grew up in Northern California, very healthy, hippie, crazy parents. And I had grown up with a lot of privilege around health and feeling good. And no, I didn't come to epilepsy until age 40, when I was writing for TV and film in Los Angeles. And I was actually on my way to the TV Academy when I had a very significant seizure, what they call a grand mal, or a tonic-clonic, which is the kind of seizure that you see in like every movie, every TV show, in the media, where you're on the ground and you're convulsing, and it's really frightening and very scary. But up until that point in my life, I was really on my way to kind of living my best life. I'd written a pilot that was based on a bunch of stories that I'd been around growing up, and I'd been working in movies in Los Angeles and doing all the things that we think we're supposed to do. So, going to yoga and hiking and eating green things and healthy. And sometimes our brains make other plans. And, I had very little familiarity with epilepsy. I just didn't. I think I'd seen one kid in my high school choir. He had had a seizure, and I thought it was one of the most frightening things I'd ever seen. But I never really experienced anything like that. But up until then, I was a very active mom, and I remained an active mom. But I wasn't a person who was ever sick. So this just had to be to me when I first had that seizure in my kitchen on the way to seeing Nanny McPhee with the kids. This kind of moment of, oh, well, this must be a one-off. This can't be happening because I'm a single mom. I'm the breadwinner. I'm a writer. I've got it. My brain is the most important thing in my body at this point. And so I've got to take care of it. And what's happening? So I was woken up by the ambulance, my daughter, the people that we were meeting at the movie premiere going, "You had a seizure." And up going, "What's a seizure? What the hell is that? What the heck is that?" Anyway. So, just really not having a lot of knowledge about this sort of thing.
Yeah, I can imagine that would just be in addition to dealing with all the health aspects of it, just such a, like, what is this? I'm healthy. This is so out of the blue. Like, this isn't me, just a total paradigm shift of what you're dealing with in life. So I want to go back to that first seizure and tell us kind of the facts that you learned after, or even during, what you remember, because I honestly don't know. How much do you remember of a seizure? Are you with it? Are you knowing what's going on? Or do people kind of fill you in on what happened later?
Well, it's funky and it's all of the above. Because on the one hand, for me, and there are 40 different, or almost, I think there are probably 45 different classifications of seizures. But the kind that I have and that I've learned what my types of seizures are over the years, but what I experienced that morning was, just a kind of like, we have to be somewhere, that typical get up in the morning, get teeth brushed, get everyone ready, getting out the door. We're going to the special thing. This is a treat. This is going to be great. And running down the street to get some coffee and coming back in my little car and going, "Oh, wow, I feel odd." It was like being in a Donnie Darko movie for a moment. Like, imagine two projectors in your head. One is, which is essentially what our eyes are, but one is like the film is going forward and in forward motion, slightly faster than you're used to. And then the other is going backwards. And it was just like, whoa, wait a minute. Okay, I cannot reconcile both of my eyes to form like stereoscopic vision of the full picture of the road. So I initially had what's called an aura on the road, which is really, really, really dangerous. You just do not want to be in that kind of situation ever. And I pretty much stopped the car on our street, just too afraid to drive because I couldn't see properly. And then in like a few, people honking behind me a few minutes later, I was like, okay, I can make it. I can make it home. I can make it to our house. I can get into the driveway. I pull into the driveway. I'm going into the house and I'm telling, the kids, okay, we've got to go. We're going to be late. And you want to do your little red carpety fun things and take some pictures with your girlfriends and whatnot. And the world, my editor always wants to say I melted into the floor, and that's not what happens at all. What happens is the world kind of falls away. It like melts away as if your eyelashes are closing really slowly. That's how it happened for me. So you see every thread, every hair of every lash closing on your vision. And then what happened was it was like swallowing a bolt of lightning. It was all the light that I could see, as if you were trapped in a Van Gogh painting. It was the most beautiful fireworks. And this is a kind of a characteristic of what's called temporal lobe epilepsy. But it was gorgeous. It was ecstatic. It was the most beautiful thing that I've ever seen. And I think I can remember trying to verbalize it to the kids, to my youngest daughter, to say, like, I have a lightning storm in my head. And I distinctly remember it being the most beautiful thing. And then the next thing I remember is just not being at all. And it's hard to remember not being, because what? You're not, but you're just not. So it's the blackest velvety blackness that you can ever imagine. But then waking up to people shining a light, and you hear all these waking up stories of people who've been in a coma, or they've had a serious condition, a chronic condition, and they're waking up and someone's shining a light in their face. And you're just, when I was waking up, I could sense, that there were authority figures all around me in navy blue, and that they were, immediately in my head, I felt like I'd been tased. And I was like, I have a taser in my head. Please don't tase me, bro. And they're saying things. They're saying things like, Miss Jones, have you taken anything? No. I mean, I take everything. I take every vitamin. But there's just no, I do all the right things. But you're not able to talk at that point. They're like, Alisa? They have this tone of voice. Alisa? What day is it, Alisa? And I'm like, yeah, we're supposed to be Nanny McPhee or something like that. And so memory is something that's really, really tricky and different every time. The seizure I had 48 days ago, I have no memory except that I stood up, and then all of a sudden I was being woken up by another set of EMTs telling me I'd had a seizure. And it's just the danger is in not remembering, and in being a person who's falling to the ground. Essentially, I fall backwards. You can end up very, very injured, which is just what ultimately happened to me in 2015. After I'd thought I'd nailed the kind of code of epilepsy, I thought I'd gotten it under control with various medications and sleep and doing all the right things that they say you're supposed to do. In the end, you think the brain is weird, but the brain is weirder than you can think, and it's going to shift and change on you. And one thing I realized in this whole adventure was that I looked around at the other epileptics that I was getting to know and reading their stories, and other people dealing with different types of epilepsy. And I wanted to own my story. I wanted to shift my narrative. I wasn't sure what I was going to do when I got the diagnosis, because it took me a while. And so denial was a big part of my strategy, which I know sounds like counterproductive. But for me, I had to figure out how I was going to do this as a single parent, as a woman who was still trying to date, and as a person who was working full time. Like, how was I going to handle all these pieces, and what story was I going to tell?
Yeah, well, that's a lot to navigate.
Yes. Initially, I was like, I'm going to lie. I'm going to be a big, skinny, fat liar. I'm just lie like crazy until I know how to talk about this.
Yeah, I think that's pretty common. Not the lying part necessarily, but the denial when something, just because it's such a mind shift, like to go
Yeah.
from not having epilepsy to having epilepsy or any of these other things. I have a family member who has diabetes who wouldn't admit it for a long time. It's just like, no, total denial. Not even to herself would she admit it. It was like, she didn't have it. And so I think that's the tendency. We don't want to. Who wants that? Who wants that to be part of your story, right? And so I think it's the same with all of these, whether it's epilepsy or diabetes or other chronic conditions. It's all kind of part of that same process.
Coming to terms with and coming to grips with and figuring out, okay, so there are a lot of people who feel like you read their stories or you read their posts on the forums, their meds aren't working or something's not working, and they're feeling so isolated. I mean, one of the things that I, as a naive person, a person who didn't know anything about epilepsy, I had no idea that I should be, that there was, I really didn't have like a whole stigma thing going on. I'm like, why should I be ashamed of my brain having an overabundance of electricity? Why should I have any stigma about that? They're like, aren't you worried what people think? And I'm like, no, not really. I mean, yes, of course I'm worried about my kids and making sure that they don't have too much trauma from seeing their mom fall down. Because that's just a scary thing when you're a little kid.
Yeah.
But one of the best things you can do is actually put together that seizure response plan so that your kid or the people around you, I guess, especially the adults, the other mothers, know what to do and can feel empowered in the moment to say, you know what, this is just a seizure. We're going to stay calm. We're going to turn the person on their side, make sure that, anything that's sharp is far away from heads and teeth and bones that are breakable and whatnot. But like being empowered with that kind of seizure response plan, like I just needed to figure out those kinds of things before I kind of busted out and was like, look, I have epilepsy and what I found when I was open about it was actually a lot of the moms and dads and other parents in our school were incredibly curious and interested and funny and amazingly helpful with helping me to navigate this like new way of living. Everywhere from like rides to the doctors because you're not allowed to drive suddenly, to rides to school, different ways of carpooling that I did not know existed. Anyway, it was very helpful, amazing. I was shocked by the kind of generosity and warmth and compassion that I saw in people.
That's so good. I'm glad you had that support because that makes a huge difference. I want to back up a little and talk a little more about your kids and kind of how this has changed things in your family dynamic. So what your kids have had to learn and, just anything relating to you as a mom and how that shifted.
Well, I think there are a couple answers. There are a lot of answers, but the biggest thing, and one of the most important things that I think we did, and I touch on it in the book in this chapter, When Mom is a Werewolf, which I know sounds horrible and dehumanizing, but we had to come up with a kind of metaphor that worked because I would have auras. So I would have a sense of like, oh, hey, I'm feeling like I'm going to have a seizure. And my automatic go-to on that is to get to the softest place. It's usually the bed or an L-shaped couch or someplace with a lot of pillows.
That seems like a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, really short. But if I know I'm going to have one, I'm going to adjust my medication. I'm going to make sure I get extra sleep. If I have any sense, and seizure forecasting is a big deal in the neurology community right now. And it should be because it really helps to keep you safe. And it really helps your kids in a way, because if they know you feel like you're going to have a seizure, they don't have to necessarily be on edge. But what they have is like that laminated plan on the fridge, which is get an adult, you know, first, you know, get safety going on, get an adult, and, you know that this isn't like, these things are really short for me. I mean, my first seizure was it was long. I want to say about 20 minutes, but
Wow.
my last one was only 3 minutes. And that's really good, for me. And so you start to get to know that, like, that beast that is epilepsy. And it's a beast of a condition. But for my kids, I feel like the best thing I can do for them, um, after they've saved, at least they've saved my life, a bunch of times, is to give them space to process their feelings about it. And that may mean, you know, giving them a real break and time out from epilepsy. They shouldn't have to deal with all this stuff all the time. They should get to live their lives and be kids and young adults. And so it really was about accepting help from people and different places that I hadn't thought I would. I mean, you never want to be a burden to your children, and you're supposed to take care of them. So it was just a very strange thing to navigate. And I could see the tension and stress that can develop in a kid who just wants to be an ordinary girl. And I definitely relate to that, because I had 3 years where meds were working for me and I had no seizures. And it was great because I just got to be an ordinary girl. And I see that definitely in the kind of leanings and ways of being that my kid, it's made them very resourceful and very interested in things like neurology and the brain and neurodiversity, meaning all of our brains are wired incredibly differently. And it's important that you find your tribe of people who get you and can be in that group with you and look out for you. And I just think that's so important, whether you're in New York or California, this idea that, I know for a fact my youngest daughter learns really well when she's moving, and she's a kinesthetic learner. So if she's walking around and talking, she's processing, she's remembering it all, she's got it. The other one, my other daughter, the older one, loves like anything with her hands, helps her process stress, emotions, everything. So you start to learn how I think your kids cope, and you need to help. You need to give them the coping tools, and you may not have that in the moment if you're dealing with a chronic condition. So it's important to have other mothers in your community, I call them the bonus moms, because they were the moms who stepped in when I was having severe seizures and said, hey, this is what we can do. This is what we're going to do about this particular situation at this particular moment. And hey, you need to get your act together, kiddo. And that was incredibly helpful for me. For them, again, I feel like it's been about giving them space to not have to respond to emergency situations. And because you'll be in the kitchen and drop a fork from the dishwasher and you'll hear, Mom? And that is hard because they're worried that you've fallen and you can't get up. And it's like, no, not yet.
Yeah.
No, I dropped a fork. It's fine. It's fine.
I'm okay. Yeah.
Okay. And then you're not supposed to take a bath or shower by yourself if you've had a seizure or something, or if you have epilepsy. And so you sing in the shower so that you can have some modicum of privacy and they can know that you're alive. So there are all these in the moment things that you improvise that I was finding myself improvising so that we could get to the next day and get to the next moment and get to a place of to find those pockets of happiness and joy in between seizures.
Man, it's so interesting to hear your story and to just hear how much that, you know, it changes everything. It changes I'm thinking of like when there's fire danger and it's like high danger today, there's that you're kind of always on the higher danger end at this, when your kids are like, oh, it's mom's on the high danger. We have to be alert if a fork drops, it's just this state of alertness and awareness that they didn't have before. And I also think it's interesting that it has spread out and you're more aware of the way their minds work and the way their brains work and how, you're seeing things differently. I think that's really interesting how it's changed your vision and your view of your own kids. I would love to, in the time that we have left, to hear your thoughts as people are listening. Your story is so fascinating and we've been listening to this. I'd love for you to share with us any takeaways for moms. So as moms listen and they're hearing this and, maybe someday they'll be dealing with something like this or maybe not, but what is it that they can change or listen to or do differently because of this conversation?
I think one of the best things as a mom, and this really was brought home to me, is that if sometimes we're in our situations with school and work and rushing around and your kids want to have sleepovers. If there's a kid, chances are there's a kid, a neurodiverse kid in your child's class. Don't hesitate inviting them on that sleepover. So that's one. And because knowing what to do in a situation, whether it's a kid who's neurodiverse and on the autistic spectrum, or whether it's a kid with epilepsy, chances are they know their condition really well. And there are ways that they can be included just the same and just as fabulously as any other kid. Because I see parents have a lot of fear when, another child has, in the class, or another woman in their book group has a seizure or something like this. Like, you know what? It's really easy. There are like 3 S's of like, stay with the person, turn them on their side, and just keep calm, keep things feeling safe. That's the best thing you can do. Keep their head safe. And what I see, if there's anything that I can give other parents or other people dealing with epilepsy or dealing with any chronic conditions, is if someone has some kind of incident, it's about keeping, you don't have to not invite them. You don't have to not, you can include them. There's a lot you can know in advance and do so that you can be the person in the moment who does keep calm, who doesn't freak out, because that's the best thing you can do with conditions like this, is that you can be the calm one who actually knows what to do. There are a lot of people living with seizures who don't disclose because they're afraid. And I guess my takeaway would be, don't be afraid. We're so everywhere and we're so very normal and boring most of the time.
Yeah, I love that takeaway. I think that that's so important just to, that is, I think, one of the best things about having this conversation is to take away some of the fear. Like, we can have this conversation like, oh, well, that's all I need to know. Okay, I got this. So it makes it less scary.
You don't have to be afraid. If a seizure lasts more than 5 minutes, yeah, then you might want to call 911, but there's a lot that you can do in the moment just to make the person feel safe and comfortable, and you can be the person who actually makes a huge difference in whether that seizure is a big traumatic deal for people or whether it's just another piece of our lives, another day.
Yes. Okay. I love it. Well, tell people where they can get more from you.
Oh, they can get more from me at alisajones.com. And the book is everywhere across America and Canada now. Barnes & Noble has been a huge supporter, and we just got #1 on Amazon, so it's there as well for new
Awesome.
releases.
Well, congratulations. That's exciting.
Yeah, #1 for like 2 seconds. And
Hey, live it up. Enjoy it while it's there. Yes. Well, we will link to that. And I appreciate you being on the call and just kind of giving us all new perspective on this, on epilepsy and, on life-changing moments. That's one thing that has stood out to me is just we don't know what's in our future. And if we can all handle it with the grace and the poise and the humor that you have handled it with, then I think we'll be doing good. So thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
And thank you everyone for listening to Moms Who Know. I hope you enjoyed today's show and learned a lot from Alisa. She was a fun guest with so much good stuff to share. I want to invite all of you, if you like today's show or any of the shows, be sure to share. When you share the show, it helps so much to get the word out there. You can also leave ratings and reviews on iTunes, and that helps more people to find the show as well. So thank you for being a part of Moms Who Know, and we'll see you next week. The show as well. So thank